What's going on, Johnny Nation? Welcome to episode 180 of the Eye of the Storm podcast. My name is David Barham, and I'm thrilled to welcome back the hardest working man in showbiz when he's not moderating the circus that is known as Big East Twitter on his infamous spaces. You can catch him on Peacock calling games and a staple of NBC's coverage of basketball and football. We usually talk during the preseason, but this year we waited for the Big East to start the action. And well, what better time than now to bring on John Fanta as it is mid-January. The conference storylines are aplenty. And most of all, St. John's versus Seton Hall is on the horizon at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. Where else would you rather be than New York City with over 15,000 of your closest friends in a rivalry game? Mr. Fanta, welcome back to the Eye of the Storm podcast.
Dave, it's great to be with you and good to be talking to everybody that's listening to Eye on the Storm, Johnny's Nation. I know that you're fired up after the way that Saturday night went in Philadelphia, as you should be. This team had a 3-game window, and they were able to notch 3 quality wins to their resume. Big, outside the Marquette game, of course, quad 1 victories to really get this thing on track and show why they're not going to be a bubble team, why they're going to be fighting and looking to keep building on that seed in the NCAA tournament. St. John's will enter tomorrow night. They are the second best team in the Big East. There's no question in my mind right now.
Yeah, and that's certainly going to be a conversation that we're going to get into. Let's start with a little bit of St. John's. John, I mentioned we usually talk in October or so on this podcast. The last few years we held off. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on something and, kind of curtail it into right now. The big storyline surrounding St. John's then and now has been about the point guard position, from anointing Ian Jackson the point guard to Rick Pitino saying the point guard position was dead in basketball, then backtracking those comments after St. John's lost to Kentucky, kind of saying that it was a recruiting failure. And now the ball has been put also into Dylan Mitchell's hands more and seeing the success of the team. So did you believe what Rick said in regards to the point guard position then? What's your thoughts now in regards to the current iteration of Ian Jackson, Dylan Darling, and Dylan Mitchell operating in that role? And do you think that perhaps the uncertainty limits the ceiling for St. John's, or have they figured it out the last 2 weeks?
Well, here's the thing. They figured some things out with how they're going to win in this league. Now, you have to understand that they lost to Iowa State by a point, and they played a much harder schedule. The frustrating loss to me was Kentucky. Providence can score, and they've got talent. They're much more talented than their record would indicate. But the Kentucky game, I know Jaden Quaintance came back that day for the Wildcats, but it was a continual trend where you thought that if the Red Storm had learned from the loss to Auburn, those would be my 2 frustrating games if I'm a St. John's fan, because they were up at the half, they had some momentum on their side, then it just dissipated. So, Dave, I think that for this team, the only way we're probably going to find out is when they get to a second-round game in the NCAA tournament, in all likelihood. But I do think they figured out who their best 5 are,
I agree.
Who their best 6 are to that end. And that's what they had to limit the rotation at some point. I think Rick's point was you don't have to have one defined point guard, but it's kind of like a quarterback competition. Sometimes when you say, well, we've got 2 or 3 guys going at it, then you don't have one, if that's how the competition goes. Do they have capable enough guard play? They do. And oh, by the way, Ian Jackson's getting better.
Oh, yeah.
And has gotten better. Dylan Mitchell is a game changer, but I think we all knew Dylan Mitchell could be a game changer. He's ultra athletic, he's fast, he's a leader, and he's long. He's long and versatile. He defends at a high level. The way that he challenges people defensively is just through the roof. And then he's a rim attack guy on the other end of the floor. To me, this team's ceiling hinges on if Ian Jackson can play steady basketball. Because when he does, everything else seems to get easier for everyone. And, Isaiah Sellers, who took 9 shots against Villanova. Didn't have his best shooting night, but had a really good night against Marquette. Ozias Sellers is a shot maker.
Yes.
Who's creating the shots for him? He could do it off the dribble sometimes, but somebody's got to create for him. And it's not like they're a heavy, they have a guy averaging 6-7 assists a game, but they do share the ball. They had 13 dishes in the win on Saturday. You'd like to have more. There's always ways that you can improve, but I think that is the best indicator of this team's ceiling, is that they only made 5 threes on Saturday. They did have some moments where, you're like, okay, in the half court still, they're trying to figure it all out, but they turned Villanova over. They shut down a Caden Lewis, and you look up at the scoreboard and you're like, they scored 86 points. Their versatility and their ability to just punish you at the rim and on the glass makes them a second weekend caliber team in the NCAA tournament. So I know Final Four. I know St. John's fans want to win a national championship. Anything's possible with Rick Pitino. But I think for this team, like, they've just got to keep Ian Jackson in the right headspace.
So John, I mean, that kind of leads me to my next point. You said the word ceiling a few times, and I think what you saw against Villanova was Ian Jackson play his best game in a Johnny's uniform, but that was paired with Bryce Hopkins also playing his best game as a Johnny as well. And when you have those two guys clicking the way that they were, I think you start to see why some people had St. John's as a top 5, top 10 team in the country. So if you look into your crystal ball, and Ian Jackson, like you mentioned, is getting better, and potentially we do get a more consistent and aggressive Bryce Hopkins. Plus, you're seeing Dylan Mitchell being able to switch 1 through 5. Obviously, Zuby Ejiofor is one of, if not the best player in the conference right now. What is the ceiling for this team, John? I know you had them, I believe, top 10 to start the year,
Top 5.
And then, obviously they hit a wall to start the year early from the Iowa State loss in Kentucky. And, you kind of wish you had that Auburn win as well. What is the ceiling? I mean, is it the second weekend? Is the ceiling higher? Because you're starting to see the team play a little bit like last year, where the switching is better. The roles are more defined. The rotation is about 8 guys now. So what's the John Vanta crystal ball potentially for St. John's as we sit here on January 19th?
Yeah, the crystal ball says that they are a team that will find a way to the Sweet 16, and they're going to get a 5 or 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. And so that will keep them from the 1 or 2 line in the tournament. I think they're going to keep picking up steam in this league because they've seen much harder competition in their non-conference, and that prepares them for the teams they're going to see in this league. I do think that Saturday's emotions and the atmosphere at the Cintas Center will be interesting for St. John's. Not to mention, Coach Pitino's at 898 wins, and so there's obviously there's going to be a sector of media people that talk about the asterisk. He's at 898 wins. Okay, yeah. So if he's able to beat Seton Hall, he'll go for his 900th career win against his son. Well, there's emotion there. There's an atmosphere. There's a lot of things. Xavier can make shots, and they don't turn the ball over, Dave. Yeah. That is one thing. They have not turned the ball over much at all. They're actually playing out of the back half of the league. They play better at times than some of these other teams. So for St. John's, like, I think they're a team that they only have 1 league loss right now. I'll say that they can go 16-4 in the conference, get a 5 or a 6 seed, be sitting in the Big East championship game potentially against Connecticut, or Big East tournament. Anything can happen that week. We all know. Yeah. But the goal is, how do you get to the second weekend? How do you get to the second weekend of the tournament? That is this big step for this program. And I think that they're going to get there because I think that they're going to be so battle tested and so ready. Bryce Hopkins is playing better, and he's finding his role. And, he's smiling more. I was at a shoot-around last week. I'm like, his attitude's very good. And I think he's figured out, like, what Coach Pitino and staff expect from him. It takes time, Dave, when you're a transfer to figure out Coach Pitino and to play for him. Not everybody can play for him. They found a wavelength that works for both of them. And I want to see Bryce do this against UConn.
I agree.
I want to see Bryce do this against the SEC. If they meet a SEC or a Big 12 or a Big 10 team in the second round, he's got to match that athleticism. He's got to match that on the interior. He beat up on Butler. Well, Butler's their team defensively, they're just not great. They're just not. And Villanova is a terrific shot-making team. They're not the most athletic team. So I want to see him take this aggressiveness. And when he gets on the big stage again, and it's going to happen, how does he handle it? But this team, they're a very dangerous team that I think will make the second weekend, provided that Jackson and that even Darling, when he gets in there, does enough. I know there's been probably more lows than highs to this point, but Darling still is needed on this team, Dave, even if it is off the bench.
Yeah. John, let's discuss this conference. UConn is clearly the top team in this conference. What they've been able to do this year isn't surprising, but it's impressive. But over the last two games, they seem a little bit more pedestrian than the first 2 months of the season. KenPom preseason ranked them as the number 2 offense in the entire country. They're currently 36. In 4 of their last 5 games, UConn has not scored more than 73 points. And to be fair, they've won all of those games, which means they've held their opponents to an average of 60 points per game. So, John, is this a bit of UConn coming down to earth as they seemingly struggled with Seton Hall and Georgetown? Or is this a testament to their versatility being able to win as well with defense?
Well, it is a testament to their versatility on defense. There's no question that they're an elite defensive team. They're far better on the defensive end of the floor this year than they were last year. They're as good on that end as anybody, and it's because of Silas Demery, because Silas Demery is a ball hawk. What's interesting is Demery normally is good at taking away your point guard, and St. John's would say, well, that's not going to be an issue for us because, you know what, we kind of rotate between point guards, and we're not structured that way. So that's going to be an interesting element to the matchup to see what happens in terms of just how St. John's goes about the matchup with Demery and what their ball movement looks like against UConn's defense, but also what their length will look like against UConn's front court. Because I think St. John's length and versatility could give UConn's defense some issues because St. John's can attack the rim at will and they're so aggressive and so physical. But all this to say, I think there's a couple things. I think number one, Solo Ball, for as good of a shot maker as he was last year, is as rough of a year as this has been for him. I mean, Dave, the other day against Georgetown, he shot 3 of 10 from the floor. He shot 0 of 5 from 3. He's really struggled to make threes. He's only shooting 28%. He's only shooting 28% from 3 on the season. This was a guy that was shooting around the 40s last year. So that's been glaring. Because Ball was thought to be a Big East Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah.
He's not their best player this year. Alex Caravan has been their best player and their most complete player. They're struggling to make threes. They don't have a Donovan Clingan inside. Like, Terrace Reed's a terrific player.
Yeah.
But they don't have this. Reed is a monster in his own way, but it's, as you know, with Zuby. Now, Zuby can step out and make a 3. It's still hard to generate offense when you're playing through your 5-man all the time. You got to play through other people. That's why Jackson's performance Saturday was so encouraging for St. John's. UConn's having trouble offensively because they're not hitting threes, and they have to. Their offense predicates on Braylon Mullins, Solo Ball, and Alex Caravan coming off screens and drilling triples. And the other day against Georgetown, they couldn't hit it. Now, the other thing is this: the Big East, the league is down. But the scouting from the coaches who know UConn, Dave, you think about it, they're facing Connecticut 2 or 3 times every year. So you know what they're running. You know how to defend them better than some of the non-conference teams that are more talented. This is a scouting league. You have to pull things up your sleeve. You have to have different ways you can beat people. Hence why this recent stretch by St. John's is encouraging because they're winning games in different ways.
Yeah.
UConn, if their offense is flowing, they're going to be very, very hard to beat anybody.
Right.
It's going to have trouble beating them. The thing that they're dealing with right now is teams are scouting defensively quite well. They're blowing up the ball screens, and they're walling up with how they defend them. Providence did a very good job of it. There's a scheme to it with UConn in how you defend their ball screens that a lot of Big East coaches enact off the ball, and I think that is one big thing that's happening in these games that's leading to UConn not getting as many open threes. Do they have some vulnerabilities? They do. Do I think they're the best team in the country or second best today? I do not, but I think they're a top 4 or 5 team. I think they can win the national championship, no question about it. But they got to work some things out. They are susceptible though, and I know they're 18-1, but they've got to lock back in how they're running their offense because right now they're struggling to do it.
John, Providence has underperformed relative to preseason expectations. The portal additions of Jason Edwards and Jalen Sellers were huge. They've got really solid freshmen in Stefan Vox and Jameer Jones, more than a capable big man in Arunze. So why hasn't it worked out so far this season for the Friars? I know I personally had them as a top 4 team in this conference. I thought that they were a shoo-in for the NCAA tournament. Why hasn't a seemingly very talented Providence team that beat St. John's at Madison Square Garden because of Stefan Vox, because of some of the names that I mentioned, hasn't been able to get it to click?
Because they're 153rd in defensive efficiency. They don't guard. And so when you don't guard, you have the talent to score 95, but if you're giving up 98, what does it matter? And so they are a terrifically talented team on paper. I would put their talent in the top 3 in the Big East, behind UConn and St. John's. Jameer Jones and Stefan Vox, man, oh man. Stefan Vox is a big-time shot maker, and Jones is an SEC-like athlete. He is just a different breed.
Yep.
To me, the pieces just haven't come together. It's like you got different guys that are very talented, but they need the ball in their hands to flourish. And at the end of the day, Jalen Sellers was coming from a UCF program that had lost. Now, Edwards came from a Vanderbilt program that made the tournament, and I think that they thought that would help them, but he doesn't take smart shots. Vox and Jones, you can't expect, and Arunze for that matter, they're all inexperienced relative to NCAA tournament. They're inexperienced. So a lot of talent, a lot of explosiveness, terrific home court, dangerous game to go out there, but they don't do the little things. They don't defend, and they struggle to rebound at times, and it's led them to being a team that's been a disappointment. They're way too talented to be 9-9 on their season and to be out of the tournament equation. And so it hasn't worked out because they don't have a defensive identity. That's why things have ultimately not worked out, and they have struggled in late game situations to close. They were up by 9 on UConn with just 3 minutes to go in that game. You got to close that game at home. They went way too fast against the pressure. I know there's a point about being aggressive, but the clock is your friend there, and they didn't use the clock.
Yeah. John, let's go a little bit broader on the conference. I'm going to ask you to rank these 5 storylines in the Big East for me. Let's start with Marquette's unprecedented struggles, 6-13 this year, 1-7 in the conference. It's very, very weird for me personally to see Marquette struggle the way that they have it at Madison Square Garden last week against St. John's. It was very, very unlike them.
You called it though. You thought that they would struggle this year, and I'll give you your flowers. You were dead on that.
Thank you.
Dead on.
UConn's reemergence back to the top of the Big East after a un-UConn-like season last year, being 18-1, as you mentioned. Nobody giving Seton Hall a chance preseason, myself included, only for the Pirates to be ranked in the top 25 on January 12th, then giving UConn a real scare last Tuesday, being 14-4. St. John's early season struggles after high expectations and then kind of figuring it out as Big East play. And the 5th one being the looming inconsistency of the rest of the conference, being Creighton and Providence and Butler and Xavier. So where are those 5 storylines as we stand on January 19th in regards to importance, interestingness for you? How do they rank?
So we had Marquette, Connecticut, Seton Hall, storyline 4.
Storyline 4 was St. John's inconsistency to start and disappointment, but then figuring it out now, and then kind of the rest of the conference being this huge question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So here's what I would say. I would say that number one. Hmm. You got to give Connecticut their credit. You got to give Connecticut their credit. They're number one. They have reemerged. I think people thought that they'd be pretty good. They were obviously a preseason top 5 team, but I don't know if I saw 18-1, and they've been fantastic. Number two is St. John's. I and they honestly might be number one in terms of traffic. Guarantee you, St. John's, because people like to hate. So when they got off to the slow start, people go crazy. They talk about the budget. They start taking shots and all of that. And look, they're very compelling because you had these high expectations. It's in New York City. You won 31 games last year. I'll put UConn 1. I'll put St. John's 2 still, because they're the two guys that drive the bus in this league in terms of the juice. One that was not brought up was Kevin Willard in year 1 having Villanova.
I was going to get there, yeah.
Relevant again, and they're 14-4 and 5-2 in the league, and they even though they lost the other night, I think Kevin. I don't think he'll ever admit this. I thought they looked tight against Coach Pitino's team, and I think there's a psychological dimension to.
Yeah, Kevin Willard, of course, part of Coach Pitino's coaching tree, and both of them waxing poetically about each other. Well, John, I'll kind of take a little bit of a detour here. Is Villanova the third best team in this conference right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they are. They went to Seton Hall and won. They lost to Creighton at home, but
and John, you gave me credit. I want to give you credit because you're probably this preseason. I don't think anybody was higher on Villanova than you were, and nobody was kind of beating the drum of, Kevin Willard is going to get this done quickly, and my gosh, what he has done and the talent that he's assembled on that team. So I want to give you your flowers as well.
Well, thank you, Dave. But you take Maryland to a Sweet 16. Maryland's in a tough place as a program.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to just acknowledge what it is. They're in the Big Ten. They don't fit in the Big Ten. And look how they're doing right now. They're one of the worst time major teams in America. Let's be real. And he took that program to a Sweet 16 in the third year. Won a tournament game in year 1. You win a tournament game at Maryland year 1, it's Villanova. They should be good. They should be good. They have a large payroll. It's going to get larger.
Yep.
Because now if I'm a Villanova donor, I'm like, this guy can coach.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's got to. Kevin made the second weekend of the tournament. He's got to just take that next step. There's no reason why at some point in his tenure they can't be Final Four good.
Wow.
They have the resources. They have the fan base. They have Philadelphia. They have Jay Wright still funding things. Jay Wright's still there. And you could look at that as he's still there. Is he overshadowing the current coach? I look at it as he's Jay Wright and he can do that, and he's still young enough that he's going to drive the bus.
I'm sure Kevin Willard is very happy and accepting that Jay Wright is there to lend a helping hand, whether it's fundraising or any kind of assistance coaching-wise.
As we're talking basketball, and the Bills just fired Sean McDermott. They just fired their head coach as we are doing this podcast. That is, my jaw is on the floor.
Ooh, that's unexpected. Okay. Wow.
That is an absolute stunner in the NFL world.
Hey, John, Cleveland Browns need a head coach.
Yeah, that just opened the door. That just opened the door for him because the Browns are going to keep interviewing. Sean McDermott's going to get a job.
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. Look out, Pittsburgh Steelers. He could go there. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Anyways, I would say the third storyline is Marquette being this miserable. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming. They've just really, part of it is Chase Ross didn't become the player they thought he would, and they're relying on freshmen.
Yeah.
I believe they will portal.
Oh,
in fact,
John,
I know they will portal. They're going to portal.
Shaka Smart has to be told that it's time. It's time.
Shaka Smart knows he has to portal.
Yeah.
He tried to make this work. You respect him for trying. I think everybody respects him for doing his thing the previous 4 years. Dave, a lot of people are like, hot seat, this, that.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, that's insanity on Shaka Smart.
He's a good coach. Let him get his, let's give him you get a pass. he'll get things back on track. Seton Hall would be 4, and then the last storyline of the mystery would be 5. Seton Hall's have been a good story. Can they score? They've really struggled their last couple of games to shoot the three. And at some point, and by struggle, I mean like this is historic levels of struggling. You shoot 3 of 17 against Butler from 3. Against UConn, you lost the game by 5. You shot 1 of 16. You can't be 4 for 33 in your last 2 games. Basketball gods, St. John's. St. John's, don't just not guard the 3, because at some point some shots are actually going to, law of metrics says a couple of shots are going to go in that have not been going in. But the Pirates, when you're offensively inconsistent, and they are inconsistent on that end of the floor, it leaves you susceptible to taking a loss like you took Saturday at home against Butler. Would I sound the panic button? Would I say the season is over? No, they're 14-4.
Yeah.
And they're 6-1 away from home. So they only have 1 loss away from New Jersey. That's a good WAB, W-A-B, that metric. That's a very good metric trait to their resume. But they're going to have to get a quality win or 2 and not take a miserable loss in this league, which there are pitfall chances.
Yes. John, you just said metrics, so I'm going to bunch 2 things together here. The 5th best team in this conference, I think, is a mystery. I think you can go with a few different teams, but St. John's has 4 quad 1 wins. UConn has a bunch of quad 1 wins. I believe Villanova has 3, but the rest of the conference, it's a huge, like I said, question mark. We initially thought that besides St. John's and UConn as clear tournament teams coming into the season, maybe Providence, Creighton, that's clearly up for debate at this point. I think Villanova is a tournament team at this point. And personally, Seton Hall is probably there, but I don't know, because things could crater for Seton Hall if the scoring doesn't keep up. Now, that being said, who needs to do the most that has a realistic shot at the NCAA tournament to earn a bid? Because we know the storyline around Val Ackerman and around this conference is that this conference needs to have better representation in March and in the tournament. So I think we can safely say right now, St. John's, UConn, Villanova is in, but who needs to help themselves the most in order to try and represent this team in the March tournament as potentially a 4th and 5th team, if not 6th?
Well, here's my thought process with the Big East first and foremost. This has been a difficult year for the league in the perspective of Marquette and Creighton have been so consistent, and neither one of them has been good enough. Marquette rough, Creighton, you take a loss at Providence Friday night, that does not help your bubble chances. Creighton's going to have to come up with a shocker over UConn, I think, in Omaha to get back on the radar. They get UConn at the end of this month. UConn's only ever won once in there. You never know if they can make enough threes. Austin Swartz and Blake Harper and Nick Graves, and they're going to have to play a big-time game. Owen Freeman didn't work out, Dave.
No.
Sometimes you miss.
Yeah. And John, it's a big miss. I was sitting next to some big Creighton boosters in Las Vegas at the Players Era tournament. They told me what they spent on Owen Freeman. That's a tough miss.
It's a lot of money, and it's a tough miss, and that sometimes happens in the portal world for different teams. But the fact is, those 2 programs have done their part for years.
Yes.
That's where I think you and I, and friendly debate, we went at it with Marquette in the preseason, because I said, I get where you're coming from. I think they could struggle, but they're not the reason why this league is where it is.
No, definitely not.
They've been a good school to the league. The fact is, Butler hasn't made a tournament since 2017. Providence, these last 3 years, has not been good enough. And Georgetown's been a joke. Georgetown, what's going on? What is going on? That is a massive. They're way too proud of a brand to have this record. They're not playing well enough.
John, I
And
have to bring it up now. Just, you
and their
bring it up.
roster's not good enough.
9-9 on the season, 1-6 in conference play, and Ed Cooley mentioning to the entire fan base following a loss that there are bigger problems in the world than losing a basketball game, which of course is true. But man, that's not what you want to hear when your team is 9-9 and your high-profile coach is in his third year of a disappointing straight season. What is going on for Georgetown, and how hot is that seat for Cooley? I know we don't really want to talk about guys losing their jobs, but man, this ain't working.
Well, there's pressure. There's pressure to win. You're getting paid a lot of money to win, and you're 9-9 and 1-6 in your league. You are what your record says. And there are bigger problems in the world, but we're talking about basketball. He gets paid a lot of money to win basketball games. And right now it's not working. It's concerning. DePaul has momentum.
Better.
Well, we can get to them in a second. Xavier's playing better. Butler's better than they've been. They're only 2-5 in the league, but their schedule's about to ease up.
Mm-hmm.
Their Big East schedule's about to ease up. The fact is, these other schools with less money are trending in a better direction than Georgetown, who has a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Georgetown has way too much money and way too much of a tradition to be this poor. And somebody said to me a couple weeks ago, they can't get people to go in the games. Well, the students have been showing up when classes have been in session. I've seen it. You've seen it too. New Year's Eve, I know the building was empty. Dave, you got to win.
Yeah.
You got to win. Don't tell me that job's impossible. Don't tell me that job's impossible. There's money there. There's money there. And if you win anywhere, ask St. John's. Ask people about St. John's before Pitino got there. Guess what? They have an AD now. They have a president. Does every place have its issues? Every place has its issues. Every single, like outside of Duke, every place has their different things. Dan Hurley would tell you there's something he wants to change at UConn right now. But at St. John's, they have money now. Every move that they should make, every move that St. John's should make, they should be talking to Mike Rapoli before they make it. He bankrolls the team. I mean, he doesn't provide all the money, but he's important to this equation.
Sure.
You got to have people who do that. And that's the other thing in the Big East. To me, I know that this won't happen. And it's not when sometimes people are on social media and stuff and they're like, it's the commissioner's fault. It's the commissioner's fault. The commissioner answers to the presidents of these schools. So the commissioner takes things to these presidents, says, this is what we have to do. Same way Brett Yormark took to his presidents. He goes, I want UConn. I want UConn. And guess what, Dave? If it were Brett Yormark's decision, they would have gotten UConn. It'd be done. And would UConn have made sense to the Big 12? I don't know about football. In basketball, I know they would have made sense because they've won national championships recently, and that adds to your league. In the Big East, you could bring things to your presidents and say, this is what we're looking at, or this is what I would suggest, or this is what I think, this is where we're at. And the presidents have to approve everything. They have to say, go for it, do this, do that, or yes, we get it. There's got to be some modernization. At some, not all. St. John's isn't in this predicament. At least I don't think that they are. I don't think that they are. But there's other Big East schools, Dave, where you got to get serious about what you're paying your players. You got to get serious about the climate. Everyone's like, well, the Big East is going to cash in because they don't have football. Yeah, but the Big East, these schools weren't spending. They were never going to spend $20 million in rev share on basketball. They don't have $20 million lying around.
So, John, are you saying that these schools basically should be told that, hey, everybody in this conference should spend 7, 8, 9 million minimum?
I think that
because I agree with that.
I think that the data should be there for the schools to say, Kentucky spent $22 million. We're not saying that you have to do that. But for capable NCAA tournament rosters at the high major level, this is what the average cost of them is. We're not telling you that you have to spend that. But if you want to be competitive and you want to get there, you've got to be spending around this figure. Dave, you can't, there's nothing in writing that you have to demand.
Right.
That's just not how it works. But if you and I have an honest discussion and the data's in front of the screen and it showed, I'm probably going to say to you, well, if we're trying to win, which I think we are, then this is what we have to do. All right, let's figure out a pathway.
Tell you, as somebody that knows the St. John's NIL landscape and how much St. John's has spent this season pretty much almost to the dollar. Um, the difference between the bottom of the Big East and where St. John's and UConn have spent is so significant that you can't even remotely have a conversation of these teams competing. Now, what Xavier is doing, and I guess we can kind of get that because Xavier is towards the bottom of what they have spent. So a lot of credit to what Richard Pitino has done with that team, and a lot of credit goes to guys like Trey Carroll who have done a tremendous job this year. But I think what you're saying is spot on. Is that these presidents need to come together, and we always talk about this. The the points and the wins, everything matters at the end in March. It helps the entire conference. So why wouldn't everybody try to be in sync on spending to better the entire conference and the product?
It's got to come out of the university budget. And a lot of times the university struggles with their budget because if they say this is what we're doing for basketball, when people say, well, why isn't it just easy? David, I'm not saying this because I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. So I'm not arguing on the president's behalf when I say this. I'm telling you where they're coming from. Okay. The issue right now, and this is a very real issue. This also just isn't in the Big East. There's other schools. There are Big Ten schools dealing with this problem. I kid you not. If they're going to spend X on revenue share, what happens is faculty, school people, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't care about that. A lot of fans are like, I don't care about that. Yeah, but guess what? A university president has to, unfortunately,
Sure.
whether you like it or not, they answer to different people. Faculty, people at the school, other areas of the university that are looking for funding, say to president, what do you mean you're spending X on this and you're taking this out of this fund to spend X on basketball? But this is where there's just got to be uniformity. It's got to be everyone in the league is being told, not being made, but again, like there's a high suggestion in college basketball that this is what it's going to take, and basketball is our bell cow. We have to win. At the end of the day, you get more publicity when your basketball program is doing well than you do any other way at these institutions. It is the absolute truth. March Madness is a billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporation. So there's got to be something that happens. Xavier, they will spend more next year. They need to spend more. Providence spent a lot on their roster. They certainly are doing it. Villanova, I think, is spending a good amount. They need to continue to increase. Creighton spends a lot of money, but there's other schools that got to keep on increasing, keep on getting better. The league, it's never as bad as people say. Also, when things are going well, it's never as great as sometimes people are saying. The ACC last year was getting walked all over. They've responded. But part of the reason why they responded is because they made some really good hires. Jay Lucas at Miami was a good hire. Ryan Odom.
Killing it.
He's killing it at Virginia. He'd be like a top 5 guy on National Coach of the Year. Nobody's beating Fred Hoiberg. But Ryan Odom would be on that radar. Will Wade makes NC State better. They don't have enough wins to their resume, but they've underperformed. But he still makes them better than they were last year. So the fact is, there's going to be some reevaluation happening. There's going to be some coaches who are coaching under pressure right now. And, do I think that the Big East is going to die? No. No. I don't think that, because these schools are too proud to let that whole thing on social media when people go that far, come on.
These are staple
that's too far
institutions in college basketball.
There's some remember, in the portal era, next year there could be 8 teams that are performing well. And Dave, it'd be great then when we're back on, or 7 teams that are performing well, and we're like, man, look at this league. It's gonna be like this forever. No, not when rosters change every offseason. We don't know. There's a level of unknown in this sport too.
Yeah. John, let's have some fun here. The Big East Conference, almost everybody has played 7 games, some 8. So good kind of check-in point. Who is the current Big East Player of the Year, and who are 3 other guys that should be on the radar for the award?
Well, Alex Karaban is my Big East Player of the Year right now because UConn's 18-1 and they haven't lost in the league. So I give the Player of the Year to the best team. Zuby Ejiofor would be 2. Zuby leads his team in points, rebounds, blocks, assists, and steals. He's the only high major player, one of two in the country that can say that they do that. Keon at Arkansas Pine Bluff is the only other guy. There's sound smart at the water cooler talk. Zuby would be right there. Who else would be on that radar? Is a really good question, because the fact is, like, the league, some of these other teams have not performed well enough to the standard to say, hey, this guy deserves it over another.
John, I'm okay with you saying nobody. I frankly, I thought the answer is obviously between, I think, Karaban and Zuby. I've obviously got a little bit of a bias, but I think Zuby's numbers are better than Karaban's. Like, I think you can argue that Zuby is more important right now to his team than
I would
Karaban.
agree with that,
But again,
but I don't know if I agree with that. I would say Zuby's probably had more production overall, but Caravan's on a better team today.
John,
Caravan means a
if
ton.
you take Zuby Ejiofor off of St. John's and you take Alex Caravan off of UConn, I think UConn can survive it much
They'd have more
more
losses.
than St. John's can.
I agree with that. I agree with that. UConn would have at least two more losses.
Hmm.
That's
And listen, obviously Alex has proven his value. Him coming back to UConn is another huge storyline, I think, for him. Dan Hurley is probably over the moon that he was able to make that happen.
But you're
of
right
course.
about the scoring piece. Like,
Yeah.
he averages 13 and a half points per game. His numbers don't show how much he means to his team.
John, a little crazy that there isn't really a third guy that we can
No,
have in that conversation realistically.
not right now.
Yeah.
Because who are you going to take over? Like, I mean, the leading scorers are Jason Edwards, Trey Carroll, Finley Bizjack. None of those guys are getting
Yeah.
Big East Player of the Year. Bryce Lindsey's had a sensational year. I would say Freshman of the Year is going to be interesting,
Hmm.
because you got Braylon Mullins, you got a Caden Lewis. A Caden Lewis could get it.
Yeah.
He didn't play well on
Yeah.
Saturday.
Got shut down by St. John's.
I'd put Stephen Vox's name in there.
Absolutely.
So
I love John. I love that kid. He's got stones for a freshman.
honestly, the voting for Freshman of the Year, there should be a media vote this year. Like, we really should somebody should fire that up, because I don't know how the Freshman of the Year will go in this league this year. That's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Quickly, just because you touched on it, I would be remiss not to. DePaul under Chris Holtman this year, they've already got 3 wins in the conference. Something that we really couldn't have said about them for many, many years. Is this the year that the Blue Demons get their first ever bye into the Big East tournament since they joined the conference?
Very, very good question. It's possible for them. They're at 3-4. They would need Creighton to continue to fall off, and they would need Seton Hall to fall off. It's not impossible. I think that they'll fit into the 6 or 7 spot, but I don't think that's bad at all.
No.
I think for them, it's okay if we get 8 or 9 league wins. Let's just say we get 8 or 9. How do we then get 11 or 12 next year? Like, it's gradual progression. And they have the longest drought of any high major to make the tournament. They haven't done it since 2004. I'm here to tell you right now, Dave, Chris Holtman's going to end that drought. I don't know if it'll be next year. I don't know if it'll be the year after. But I think at some point in the next 2 years, if not 3 years, that drought is ending in the Chris Holtman era. DePaul is set up for success. Remember, Holtman's the only guy with a staff of all former head coaches. So that's another very good trait to have.
Huge.
You know why? You know why, Dave? I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not foreshadowing anything. If he were to ever leave, your next head coach could already be on staff.
Right.
Like, the staff is very, very good. They have put something together. Dwayne Peavy deserves credit for this hire. Yes, he missed on Tony Stubblefield in a variety of ways. And that was a disastrous hire. But, you've got Jack Owens, you've got Brian Mullins, you've got Laval Jordan, Paris Parham's done a nice job there at DePaul. DePaul is CJ Gunn is a high-level shot maker. Like, CJ Gunn's an all-conference player. He is an all-conference player.
He's played phenomenally this year.
Leighton Blocker and NJ Benson stuck with the process, but then they got a couple of other guys. Brandon Macklin gives them something. RJ Smith gives them something. They got some good pieces. I like their team. Remember, they came so close to making the Big East semis last year. They almost knocked off Creighton in that wild overtime game. The Blue Demons are an interesting team, because when you look at them, they've gotten bigger. They're much better defensively. They're 50th in KenPom defense. By comparison, last year they were 139th. They're still not a great offensive team, but they can really guard you and lock you down for segments of a game. They are an improved team, and a trip to Wintrust Arena is now all of a sudden much more dangerous than it's been. Their net's not terrible, which is good because it used to be a horrible net game. It's a quad 2 game now. So it's not like it's going to, if let's just say you were to have a pitfall loss, it wouldn't destroy your resume.
John, that used to be a big quad 4 game. And listen, they deserve a lot of credit, man.
They do. He's done a nice job.
Yeah. John, last week you were on with Evan Mia in his debut episode of his new show. Evan's a friend of the program. You guys did an exercise where you guys started naming legitimate teams to fight for an NCAA title. Obviously, UConn was in that for you, but nobody else from the Big East made any of the tiers, which I understand. But if you had that conversation to start the year, St. John's would be in that conversation. Obviously, things look different when you lose to Alabama, Iowa State, Auburn, Kentucky, and recently Providence. Besides beating UConn, is there anything else that St. John's needs to do from now until the second week of March to kind of get back into that conversation? Can they get into that conversation at all? Or has too much damage kind of been done from what they did in November, December?
If they beat UConn on February 6th, they're right back in the conversation. And I think they'll go into that game ranked because I don't think they're slowing down. And I think that's going to be a mammoth game at MSG on a Friday night. I expect the Garden to be filled to the rafters. Humongous game. But they're in position. Don't take a bad loss. Don't lose at Marquette. Don't lose at Providence. The Valentine's Day game for Bryce Hopkins and his return to Rhode Island is going to be a bit of a dangerous game on paper just because the emotion of the game. But I think for St. John's, what's the goal, Dave, to get back into that mix? Beat UConn once. Get a win over the Huskies in the regular season.
John, how do you see St. John's matching up with UConn in that game? We're still a few weeks away from that. A lot can change. But, do you put a Dylan Mitchell on an Alex Caravan or a Mullins? What kind of fireworks can we expect in that game from so much talent being on the court and, well, certainly on the sidelines as well?
Well, the question is going to be, how does St. John's score on UConn? We could talk about how the St. John's match up defensively with UConn, but let's talk about the offensive end of the floor. This is going to be a game where Silas Demery is going to try to get on the ball, whether it's Ian Jackson or whether it's Dylan Darling, and make it hard and really get on them. I think it's going to be crucial, the glass, and trying to get Terrace Reed into some foul trouble. Because Eric Ryba's capable, he's talented, but UConn is so different without Reed on the floor. So the matchup between Zuby Ejiofor and Terrace Reed will be 1-2 watch. Oziah Sellers has to be able to match up with solo ball in terms of if ball's making shots, Sellers can't be just having an off night. But the Hopkins versus Caravan, these two have been guarding each other, have been going at, there's going to be fireworks there. There's a fireworks showdown all around. And for St. John's, the question is going to be, Ian Jackson, can you dig in and can you guard Silas Demery? That's going to be a big question in this game. Can Sellers track down ball? And then Braylon Mullins is the game breaker. That to me, when I look at St. John's, I'm with you on Dylan Mitchell's got to be that defensive weapon. They might put Mitchell on Demery every now and then just because he's long.
Yes.
And he can disrupt the passing lanes.
Yeah, and they've done that a lot this year too.
Have Mitchell on the ball. You got to track. You gotta track Mullins. Dave, this might come off as a hot take. Braylon Mullins is the scariest player for me if I'm a UConn opponent.
Wow.
You cannot let him get free. If he gets free and he starts making threes, you pack it up. He is that good. He's a pro. Could be a lottery pick. And man, he's got a killer instinct. He killed Providence.
Sure did.
Just put them away. So you've got to prioritize guarding Mullins.
John, does St. John's have anybody like that UConn is going to be saying the same thing about?
UConn will be saying, we can't let Oziah Sellers get free for open threes because when he makes threes, then it eases everything off of Ejiofor and Hopkins. So that's going to be big. And then Ian Jackson's the guy.
Yeah.
That's got to be scary.
Yeah.
Like if I'm a if I'm
If
a
he
if
plays
I'm
the
a
way that
St.
he
John's
did against
opponent,
Villanova.
yeah, I say Ian Jackson averaged 20 plus per game in a 7 game span at Carolina. If that version of Jackson shows up, we're screwed.
Hmm. All right. Well, John, we're finishing it off here. It is your alma mater coming to Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. Seton Hall came into the last week ranked 2 losses in a row. Will probably drop them out of the top 25 when the AP poll refreshes
Mm-hmm.
on Monday afternoon. Against UConn, though, Seton Hall, I thought was going to lose by 15 to 20 points, but showed a lot fighting back into that game. And then I was like, okay, but then they lose to Butler. And so you're like, all right, what is this team? Are things starting to flounder a little bit? But St. John's is also trending the other way. Things are getting better. They have found their offense. This is, like you said, the second best team in the conference right now. The high octane offense versus the pressure defense of Seton Hall. Thoughts on this matchup? What's going to happen on Tuesday night at the Garden? How do the Pirates match up with the Red Storm?
Well, how do the Pirates match up with the Red Storm? Decently in the front court. Stephon Payne and Najai Hines can hang in with Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins. I actually think the foul game is going to be interesting in this. There's going to be a lot of fouls. I'm here to tell you right now. The Pirates don't have the shot making that St. John's has when St. John's is cooking. So to me, the key to this game is going to be if Seton Hall's to be in the game. The key in the game is going to be whether or not AJ Staten McCray and Mike Williams are knocking down any threes, because Seton Hall has been dreadful from beyond the line, beyond the arc the last 2 games. They're 4 for their last 33 from 3. I mean, that is just awful. So Bud Clark, St. John's has the size. They've got the length. Like the idea of Mitchell picking up Bud Clark, the size differential is it's massive. I mean, it's there. I don't think St. John's will do that because I think it'd actually be wasting Mitchell at that
I don't think
point.
you need to. You'll have a 6'4" Ian Jackson on him. You'll be
It'll
fine.
be Jackson on him, and then the Pirates are going to have to turn St. John's over. St. John's going to have to play an off game where they're not hitting any shots. They're turning the ball over.
And St. John's has protected the ball better, especially in these last 4 games.
Absolutely.
They really made it an emphasis. And you talk about the foul game. St. John's is one of the best teams in the entire country of getting to the line and drawing fouls.
They are. So free throw shooting, don't turn the ball over. St. John's is the better team right now. They're playing better basketball, and they've got the best front court player, one of the best in the country, in Zuby Ejiofor. That sometimes is an area where Seton Hall beats teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough matchup for the Hall because at point guard, Clark can have a high level game, but if Staten McCray and Williams aren't making threes and Trey Parker's not making shots, like those 3 have got to make some threes to space St. John's defense out. There's got to be some anomaly shot making for the Pirates to, and I say anomaly because they haven't made shots. They've got to open the game up with some 3-point shooting. It's not really who they are, but it's the way that they have a chance. I think St. John's will get the home win. I think the rematch in Newark could be more difficult because Seton Hall could have a lot on the line at that point. It's the last regular season game for both those teams. But St. John's is riding a hot wave right now. For the Hall, they need to come out of this week with a win. I just saw Brad Wachtel, who does a very nice job on bracketology. I know you follow him.
Yep.
He has Seton Hall as a 10 seed. I don't think losing at St. John's would drop you out of the tournament projection. It's a quad 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
But they then go to DePaul on Saturday. The Hall would have to win that game.
Sure. Yep. I think that's pretty spot on. Rick Pitino said that this is a team and a game where he doesn't think St. John's is scoring 85, 90 points because of Seton Hall's defense, and certainly not a game that the Johnnies can overlook. The way that Shaheen Holloway has gotten this team to buy in and the talent that he has put in and what he's gotten out of said talent is incredibly commendable. And again, one of the biggest storylines in the country. He's John Fanta, the absolute best, the mayor of the Big East, and I can't appreciate you coming on mid-season, the busiest guy in the world. There's like 9 planes waiting for John as soon as we hop off of this, as he's traveling the country to call another game. We'll see you very soon calling another St. John's game, and John, you're the best. I adore you, and I can't thank you enough.
Dave, thank you so much for the love. Appreciate all of the the Johnny's fans out there, Johnny Nation, you are fantastic. Your passion is through the roof. Dave, you do a great job with this pod. It is a second to none podcast in terms of the analysis, the content. Your energy's through the roof. Enjoy the Garden on Tuesday night, Johnny Nation, and I'll be talking with you very soon. I appreciate you guys. With humility, I say it really means the world. So thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. He's John Fanta, Johnny Nation. Thank you for listening. It's Seton Hall on Tuesday night at the Garden. I will see you there, and as always, we'll catch you next time.